Welcome back to this channel. And we're going to slow down because it's 2026 and I'm afraid we're too far gone anyway. And so I'm going to make the content that I'm comfortable making, that I think matters, and I'm not going to do something that is out of my realm of expertise. So as we get talking about this incident that happened yesterday in Minneapolis, understand I am not an expert at anything related to this. Maybe I'm an expert in humanity, but I'm not an expert in law enforcement. I'm not an expert in politics. I'm not an expert in any of that. So there are people with a platform that are sharing their opinions, and some are prefacing them as these are my opinions, and some are prefacing them as these are facts. And we live in an age where anyone can weigh in. And so maybe view this video not from a lens of me weighing in as the judge, but me weighing in as a person who has opinions and emotions and feelings about what we saw yesterday. So take everything I say with this idea that I'm not claiming to be right. I'm just wanting to speak on something that I believe is a massive issue. So I did get on Twitter last night. I had been avoiding Twitter because it does not make me feel good in any way. But last night I got on before I had even heard about the news that had happened in Minneapolis. I got on, and of course the entire timeline was just that. And so my brain is working double time trying to figure it out. I am a fairly logical person. Just at baseline, I do try to think about things as logically as possible, and I do try to approach it from that perspective. Always have. And last night I struggled mightily to logically come to the conclusion that what we saw needed in any way, shape, or form to take place. The sad truth of the matter is I am not going to change anyone's mind, and I don't want to change anyone's mind. No matter what I say in this video, you're going to come in with a certain bias, and you're either going to plant your flag next to me and cheer with me and high five me and chest bump me maybe, and maybe hug. Maybe you kiss me on the lips after all's said and done because you agree with what I say. And there's going to be people who look at this, and no matter what I say, they may not even listen to it. They may just get into the comments and defend the actions of the ICE officer. So I'm going to give you my quick analysis of what occurred. Not that it matters, not that it's accurate or factual, but it's important contextually as I break down the larger picture, because you have to understand how I am viewing this, not how you're viewing it, and then taking my overarching umbrella opinions and trying to force those into how you're viewing it, because we all view it differently. And maybe we should, and maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. So obviously the woman was in her car, and it looks like she is waving on cars. It looks like she's trying to get out of a parking spot, a side road parking spot, and there are ICE agents around, and she's trying to wave the traffic on so she can clear out the space so she can leave. That's what it looks like. That may not be what was happening. A truck comes up with ICE agents. First of all, do I believe ICE agents should be disrupting neighborhoods during the middle of the day without any legal proceeding or anything? No. So there's my first bias. I don't agree with what is going on in our country. The unlawful, non-judicial abducting of people, because they are people. Well, they're not legal. They're people. So if they're not legal, if you're going to use that terminology, then let's figure out how we can legally, right, do what you believe is right and I believe is right. Because I don't think reacting the way we've reacted with ICE is is a fundamentally correct. And I think it opens the door to a lot of other issues, which I think we're seeing. So she waves on this truck. The ICE agents look to get out of the car and approach her. One of them comes to her car. Why? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me why a woman in a car driving who had just waved on what looked to be ICE agents was trying to wave on another car, why they stopped and got out of their car. That part I cannot figure out. It doesn't make sense to me. He comes up and he's grabbing the door. I don't know if he's instructing her to get out. I've heard that that was what was happening. And the ICE agent who eventually fires his weapon was not involved in this truck. That's the confusing part. And I think that's where, if you want to talk logic and fact, that's where I kind of have this perspective that I think if you support the ICE agent, I would like you to consider my perspective, although you probably won't. So he comes around the back of the car and he comes up to the front. He's being talked to by some other woman or man. I don't know. And so he comes around to the front of the car, and the woman in the car is talking to the left out the driver's side window to the ICE agent. And he starts grabbing for her truck, reaching for her car. Why? I don't know. I don't see in any way, shape, or form why that is real, why that happened. Why was an ICE agent just getting into someone's car? I don't, again, this is where I don't know the legal grounds that ICE agents have. I don't believe they have law enforcement powers in the same way that a policeman does. And maybe the guy grabbing was an actual policeman. Again, things I don't know. But a masked man was grabbing at her car door. I believe her attention was on that man. And if somebody's grabbing at your car door trying to get in, and you're not a fan of that, you can drive away. And so she put it in reverse to kind of clear more space. And then she put it in forward and she started to go. And at that point, another officer was in front of her. And I believe she was so distracted by this man who's trying to get into her car that she was not aware of the person in front of her. And maybe she should have been, and maybe she should have looked forward, and maybe she did see him. I don't know. I'm just saying, if I was in that situation, and my attention would be right here, out my driver's side door, and I would be trying to leave, and oh, look, there's a person right there. It's too late. Now, if we talk about that person, if you watch it in slow motion, you can tell that the first shot is not fired until he is beside the car, period. So before we try to argue anything about that, he was looking to shoot someone, in my opinion. He was clearly out of the way of the car. If you watch it in slow motion, the first shot is fired. He fires, I don't know, one or two more shots when she is fully out of his way. I do not see this as a situation of he was directly in front of the car. He had no other options but to fire his weapon to save his own life. He had to. I saw it as a man acting from a power trip, a man who wanted to execute someone. There's really no other way to put it. And so the woman dies. And the ICE officer walks away, and he's filmed, and he's fine. And an interesting other video I saw was there were physicians there, like neighbors, people, pedestrians that were physicians. And they saw this all happen. The car had just crashed, and they were asking the ICE agents, hey, I'm a physician. We have physicians here. Can we go help her? And they said no. They said, we have medics here. We have our own medics. And I believe in the video, the guy said, well, where are they? Anybody who knows anything about the world knows that time is important in those situations. The faster you act, the higher the probability that a life is saved. And I don't think a life would have been saved, to be completely honest. I think what was done was done. I don't know that to be true, but I believe that that's the case. But the fact that other ICE agents were so inhumane in even allowing a physician in that. It's like they said, well, she was guilty of something, so she deserved death. And we decided that on a side street in Minnesota at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This man dressed in tactical armor, holding a military-grade weapon, decides, you know what? Without any facts or data, possibly didn't even see it, she deserved to die, so I'm not going to let you help her because she got what was coming to her. And I think that's a really bizarre piece of this puzzle that is kind of like the cherry on top of the depressing sundae. And so that's how I took the situation. Now, that may not be how you take it, and that's okay. I would challenge you to remove maybe a political affiliation or bias and look at this as that woman in the car is someone important to you who was just approached by a masked man trying to get into her car, and she tried to leave because that makes a lot of sense, actually. And she was killed because of it. That's not the worst part, in my opinion. I mean, yes, it's the worst part. It is fundamentally the worst part. But I want to talk about two things that I believe scared me more for the future of us. This is the leader of our country. This is someone whose job is to make America safe, as he puts it in his own words. As the blood of a innocent woman, and we can debate innocent, but I'm going to call her an innocent woman, is now in the snow in Minnesota. So we're going to read this, and then we're going to read his buddies, which I think is equally bad in its own way, and we're going to talk about these. Then we'll be done. I've just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. Now, so far, so good. But I have a feeling when he says it's a horrible thing to watch, he's not talking about what you and I find horrible. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator. So that would be the woman who was involved with the ICE agent who actually shot the woman. So that would be the guy and the girl behind the car that I described that walk eventually to the front. And the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. So I would not call her disorderly. I would not call her obstructing and resisting. Maybe you could make an argument she was resisting, but in some capacity, if ICE agents don't have legal authority to act in certain ways, resisting doesn't apply. I'm not an expert on that. I don't know. Who then violently? No. She backed the car up. If she was being violent, she would have gunned it forward. She backed the car up. Willfully, sure. And viciously ran over, nope, the ICE officer. And this is the most alarming part. 3 sentences in, we're already lying, blatantly lying about what happened. People are going to see this. They're going to believe this as true because as the president, you have automatic ethos, or you should. People should be able to trust you implicitly. You have been elected to stand for our country. You have a duty to be truthful. This is a blatant lie. He was not, I don't believe, even touched by the car, let alone run over, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. Nope. It is very easy to believe he is alive because you watched him fire 3 shots at her from the side of the vehicle, not get touched, and then after the vehicle crashes, he walks over to her, and then he's filmed, and then he walks back, and they may have taken him to a hospital just, to cover this politically or to make it look better. But no, that's just a lie. And you may be saying, well, buddy, Where have you been? All this guy does is lie. I know. I know, right? And maybe I should speak up more about these lies. But there's something about an event of this magnitude when it's on camera. It's no he said, she said. We can watch it and we can say, oh, no, that didn't actually happen. Like there is nobody who can watch this and say that she viciously ran over him. That's a lie, and everybody knows it. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. So instead of drawing people together in this time of crisis and horror, he does this all the time. He is adding dissension. He is trying to divide. He is trying to incite more violence. He is blaming. And that's terrifying to me. They are just trying to do a job of making America safe by putting 3 bullets into a woman's windshield. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate. I'm alarmed because this is a blatant attempt to do the opposite of what he should be doing, which is finding justice, which is relaxing a nation, which is not taking sides. And honestly, I really can't put into words how scary it is that this is occurring. I've lived through and been cognizant of Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. And I've never seen a president not have damage control and like PR training. And it's because he wants it to be like this. So here's the thing. This is scary, but it's kind of expected. We're at a point where like I read this and I go, yeah, he's lying. This is propaganda. This is bad. Objectively, this is wrong. And in a weird way, I think this is worse. When Trump was running against Harris, I was watching the debates, and I truthfully, just being honest here, I watched the vice president debate, and there were things that J.D. Vance said and did that I was like, oh, like that's not the worst thing I've ever heard. I didn't vote for this administration. I don't care for J.D. Vance's, a binder of beliefs. But in some ways, I looked at J.D. Vance as someone who was going to tone Trump down. You are who you associate with. My hope was that Trump became a little bit more like J.D. Vance, a little bit more reasonable. I think J.D. Vance was, at least at the start, a little bit more reasonable. And maybe that's how they pitched him, sort of this, level head to Trump's hot head. This is not the same J.D. Vance that we saw during the election. I don't believe. My opinion. This is mini Trump. And this is terrifying. I want every ICE officer to know that their president, vice president, and the entire administration stands behind them. To the radicals assaulting them, doxing them, and threatening them, congratulations. We're going to work even harder to enforce the law. So I don't even know if they're enforcing the law is the other thing. But what this does is it gives a green light to every officer, ICE officer, like the one we saw yesterday. What it doesn't say is, hey, what happened in Minnesota yesterday was a tragedy. As you see down here, a mother of 3, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I'm going to assume it's true. I know she at least had one son. You killed someone. And there's nothing from J.D. Vance that says, we're going to look at this, right? We're going to, it's a tragedy. Someone's dead. We need to figure it out. Let's look at the facts. Let's get to the bottom of it. No. None of that. And do I think that would be bad in its own right? Yeah, because I think it's pretty obvious what is occurring. But I think this is worse. Because if I'm an ICE officer, I read this from the second most powerful person in America, and I say, oh, I can do whatever I want. What happened yesterday was excusable, was permissible, was appropriate even, was encouraged, by golly. And as long as I can barely defend self-defense, as long as I can barely scrape by, not even logically scrape by, the idea that I was protecting myself first, I'm good. And so while yesterday was terrifying as a whole, I think the reaction from the leaders of this country terrified me the most as we looked forward. I don't know what's going to happen politically. I don't know what midterms bring. I don't know anything about that. I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be pessimistic. But it's hard for me to think that we're not headed somewhere we have not really seen the likes of as a country, at least in my lifetime. I think this administration wants destruction, war, chaos, disorder. To heck with American people, as long as it's better for the elites, the 1%, the people on his team. All's fair. So that's what I have, for what it's worth. Cheers, I guess.